Hey math friends, welcome back. Today what we're going to do is review for our quiz that we're going to have tomorrow on proportional relationships and constant of proportionality. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we know if a table, equation, graph, or words represents a proportional relationship, and we want to know how to find the constant of proportionality within those. So let's review this a little bit. Okay, the first thing we need to make sure we know, what is a proportional relationship? And we said a proportional relationship is going to be a relationship where two quantities are multiplied by the same scale factor. So let's add that in. So a relationship where two units is what I'm going to say are multiplied by the same scale factor. Okay? If I could spell right. All right? And then a proportional graph. We know that a proportional graph, if this was my coordinate plane, a proportional graph has to be a straight line and it has to go through the ordered pair 0, 0, or the origin, right? So now let's talk about their equations. A proportional equation is the format y equals k times x. And it doesn't have to be y and it doesn't have to be x, but k is a number, like an actual number. So let's talk about constant of proportionality for these. We know that in a graph, we're looking for where the x is 1, whatever that ordered pair is, what is the y value? So the ordered pair 1y, where x is 1, that is our COP. So we could say 1 COP. And then for a proportional equation, we know that the COP is our K value. All right? So now let's look at a table. So if I have these values in a table, all right, what do we do to figure out if this table is proportional? Well, we know that for a proportional table, it has to be multiplied by the same scale factor. So for every value in the table, or for every ratio in the table, I need to multiply by the same number. So 2 times what number is 4? I could work backwards if I don't know this, and I could say 4 divided by 2, and I get 2. So I'm multiplying by 2 here, by 2 here, by 2 here, and by 2 here. Am I multiplying by the same thing throughout the entire table? Yes, I am. So I know that it is proportional. And in addition, the COP, that was a bad P, is this number that we're multiplying by. Okay? And then constant of proportionality in vocabulary terms is just the unit rate. So remember, unit rate is the amount for 1. So if I have this table here, I would add 1, 2, because that's the amount for 1 of x, maybe apples, 2 is maybe the cost or something like that. So let's practice. Are these relationships proportional? So let's look at this table. So I've got cups of milk and cups of flour, and I need to figure out if I'm multiplying by the same number for every row. So let's figure out the first one. I don't know what 1.5 times some number gives me 6, so I'm going to do inverse operation. I'm going to divide. I'm going to do 6 divided by 1.5, and I get 4. So I know that 4 is the first one. 4 times 4 gives me 16. If I were to do inverse operations for the third row, I would get 4 again. For the fourth row, I would get 4. For the fifth row, I would get 4. So I'm multiplying by the same number all the way through. So it is a proportional table, and my COP is 4. For the second one, it's a graph about birthday cupcakes and dozens of cupcakes and hours. I'm assuming this is how long it takes to make how many dozens. So for 1 dozen cupcakes, it's 4 hours. 2 dozen is 8 because these are perfectly, I say in the crosshairs where it's perfectly aligned there. So what 2 things do we know about proportional graphs? We know that they have to be a straight line and it has to go through 0, 0, or the origin. Well, is this a straight line? I think so. And does it go through the point 0, 0, or the origin? Yes, it does. So this is a proportional graph, and this was a proportional table. Now let's practice finding the COP in all 4 representations. So we have an equation for number 3 here, and we need to find the COP. We know that the format for a proportional equation is y equals k times x, and k is our COP. Well, what is the number that is constant for this equation? 1.5. So the COP is equal to 1 1/2. For number 4, let's talk about the COP here. We have months and we have total revenue. I want to know if I have a horizontal table, I'm going from top to bottom. What am I multiplying by to go from top to bottom? Even if the bigger number's on top, okay? So 2 times something equals 190. We're going to figure that out by doing 190 divided by 2, and we get 95. So our COP has to be 95. And we're not going to do the rest of these simply because I know that it's a proportional table, but you may want to do that when you're practicing or when you're taking your quiz. So look at number 5. A restaurant has an all-you-can-eat buffet. They charge $13.95 per person. So for 1 person, it's $13.95. Well, remember, constant of proportionality is the unit rate, which means the amount for 1. So for 1 person, if it's $13.95, our COP is $13.95. Let's look at the last one. This is a graph of miles and hours on a summer road trip, and we need to find the constant of proportionality. We need to look at where the x value is 1, find that point, and figure out what the y is. To me, it looks like that y value is probably in between the 50 and the 100, so I'm going to take a guess here and estimate that the COP is 75. So the ordered pair would be 175, with our COP being 75. Now, let's go back and let's write an equation for each of these. So for number 4, we said our COP is 95. If I were going to write an equation for that, I need to write it in the format y equals kx. So I'm going to write the total revenue, so I'm going to write T for total, is equal to 95 times the months. For number 5, it's the cost per person. So the cost, C, is $13.95 times the number of people. For number 6, we're talking about miles and hours. So the miles is equal to 75 times the number of hours. So you may have a question where you're given a table or a graph, and you want to make sure that you can write an equation for that. And then the very last one, we're going to just make sure we can interpret a proportional graph. So which ordered pair can be used to determine the unit rate? Well, we know unit rate is COP, so we know that it's the amount for 1. So 1 going to go up, looks like it on 3, so we're going to say 1, 3, where 3 is our COP. And then it says, what does 515 represent? So I've got 5, I'm going up to 15. Well, 5 is the number of hours, and 5 hours gives 15 dozen cupcakes. So that's how we would interpret the graph. We would read it as 5 is our x, so that's 5 hours, gives us 15 dozen cupcakes. Okay? So for your practice today, we're just going to practice this a little bit, and then tomorrow we're going to take a quiz. Good luck, guys.